already discussed it.
Okay, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Thank you.
Denise.
Sangeeta Patel, 4232 North Lake Drive. I guess to begin with, I would like to say I think we all feel the same way. None of us want something like this to happen again in Shorewood. To do that, we really have to understand the circumstances that led to this tragedy and what additional steps we can take in the future. The fact is, the lifeguards that we usually have, or even a new security guard, would not have been around at the time this happened. Also, once people trespass from Outwater Beach onto the private beaches, there are less people around in case of emergencies. And as in this case, people don't know where they are and to call for proper help. So basically, without necessarily even realizing it, people are putting themselves in a greater danger by trespassing off of Outwater Beach. I agree with Kathy that a fence would help prevent the trespassing and would be a stronger measure to protect against such a tragedy from happening again. The signs in place are simply not enough. People trespass off Atwater Beach regularly at any time it's open. I often see people, even children, climbing on the jetties and walking all along them, which are in great disrepair. The thing is, when I go to a public park or a public beach, I expect the government is already taking care of the safety issues. I let my children roam free in parks and expect that if there's playground equipment or dangerous situation, it is blocked off, fenced off, or otherwise warning me that this is a dangerous condition and shouldn't let my children nearby. Right now, there's a snow fence around vegetation, but no fence or anything to suggest that the jetties or going off Atwater Beach is dangerous. This is a public safety issue, and the village needs to do something to protect beachgoers. As you must know from the recent emails between Mr. Arf, Mr. Bayer, and I, we've been discussing the legal options with regard to adding a fence to protect people from climbing onto the jetties. First, this was an issue back in 2009, and this came up then. This isn't about taking away public's right to access, because quite simply, the public has no right to any of the private beaches. The law is very clear on this. Even the DNR acknowledges this and explains it on its own website. On lakes and flowages, the requirement remains that users must be in the water with no right to use the exposed shoreline without the owner's consent. This is a public safety issue, not an access issue. Secondly, all of the Atwater Beach is under a village's authority. Again, the law is quite clear on this. In the July 12, 2010 legal memo from Mr. Palmer and Mr. Deneen, is that you?
Deneen.
Yes, in that memo, you say that Atwater Beach is part of the land that was given to Milwaukee County in 1933, and in fact, the village of Shorewood owns and exercises control over Atwater Beach up to 1,000 feet into the water. However, in October 2011, the village went to DNR to get their opinion with regard to fencing on Atwater Beach. At that time, the DNR stated it would not recommend fencing across the beach, but would recommend fencing along the jetties for public safety. Recently, in light of the drowning, Mr. Arf went back to DNR, and they said they would likely not change their opinion and asserted authority under their governing statute, which is Chapter 30, Navigable Waters, Harbors, and Navigation. However, it very clearly states in Chapter 30, Section 30.05, that nothing in Chapter 30 is applicable to the shoreline and submerged land given by the state to municipalities, including Atwater Beach, which includes Atwater Beach. The DNR has no authority over Atwater Beach. In fact, the way they draw their right of authority in that 2000 letter opinion, or 2011 letter and opinion, it allegedly includes the boardwalk, play equipment, and snow fence that is already on Atwater Beach, none of which seems to have been permitted by them. They drew the line right up to the end of the sidewalk. At that time, there was no boardwalk, playground, anything. I believe the village should not be giving up its own citizens' right to control Atwater Beach to DNR. You don't want to make a precedent that every time you want to make improvements to the beach, you have to get DNR's permission. As I stated, this is a public safety issue, and Atwater Beach is entirely within the village's control to fence and make safe. All you have to do is look to the south, to the lakefront in front of Milwaukee. There are safe access points and fences or other blockages to direct the public to where it is safe to access the water. We need to do that here. Finally, I understand there is an aesthetic concern, but you should, for the time being, put a snow fence in to protect beach shores, like the one that's already on Atwater Beach, protecting the vegetation. Then work on the aesthetics to come up with a long-term plan. But at least in that way, you've done your job to ensure greater public safety at Atwater Beach. Thank you.
Larry?
Well, Mr. President, we have a lot of ground to cover. We don't have time tonight to get into an extensive discussion of the regulatory environment which underlies this issue. I have copied the trustees on all of the email chains that have gone back and forth between the village manager's office and the village attorney's office and have gone to the DNR. The gentleman sitting next to me was one of the people that prepared two legal opinion letters related to this issue back during this time period, and I believe copies of those have also been made available to the current board. The letter that Kathy referred to from 2011 was a letter from the DNR where they most certainly asserted jurisdiction over a portion of the beach. They have never asserted jurisdiction over the park, and they have not asserted jurisdiction over playground equipment or landscaping. The only jurisdiction they've asserted is over a portion of the sand beach, which they have identified as the ordinary high water mark. I'm not sure we agree with their definition, but that's what they've defined the ordinary high water mark as being, according to their interpretation of the statutes and their authority in order to install structures, including fencing, within that piece of sand that they've identified as an ordinary high water mark requires a dual permit from the Corps of Engineers and the DNR. The purpose for the 2011 letter and the purpose for our recontacting DNR this summer is to see whether or not they have changed their position, that they have regulatory oversight regarding that portion of the beach. And again, we're talking about the sand beach only. We're not talking about the balance of the park or the other accoutrements that are installed there. We have received communication back from the DNR. The staff person that's in charge of this process has already run the question up the chain of command and felt very comfortable with the response that she made to the village. However, that person is on vacation this week. They have promised us a formal written reply, which we should have in about 2 weeks. They'll be gone on vacation for a week. And as soon as we get that written reply, we will do an analysis of that, determine what our legal options are, if any, to challenge their position with regard to fencing in that area that they've identified as the ordinary high water mark. And we certainly would invite the residents as well. Actually, this lady from the DNR has engaged the residents, are experienced with the agencies. They expect the municipalities to engage the residents. In this case, the DNR staff has been willing to do that directly. So Mrs. Patel will have an opportunity to articulate her legal opinion directly to the DNR, and they can respond to that. In the interim, I do not believe, and I think the village attorney will concur, that the village board has the authority to fence that beach. And if you decide to do that, you may be at some jeopardy either from the DNR or complaints coming from residents challenging our ability to block that portion of the beach. So I would urge the board to await the formal letter from the DNR. It'll be here in a couple weeks. We'll follow up with more communication at that time to see if there's a way to resolve this matter. Questions?
Yes, Trustee Rosen.
Does, in your opinion, a temporary structure for emergencies, so for instance, I don't feel comfortable doing nothing until we hear back from an agency because they're on vacation. So in the event of emergency has happened, a safety issue has happened, in those instances, are we allowed to install a temporary 2-foot snow fence or whatever, however tall these are, until we have further, is that within our right?
I believe that in an emergency, one can always take actions that are necessary to protect lives. However, the tragic situation occurred not on village property. It occurred off a jetty in the lake adjacent to private property. I don't know the exact distance, but some distance up the beach. So I'd be hard pressed to state that putting a snow fence at Atwater Beach would be addressing an emergency at Atwater Beach.
Well, it's an emergency safety issue.
And I concur, first of all, if the police department or the village manager determined that this was an emergency situation, I believe that they'd be within their authority to go do something about it right away. You wouldn't have to come and ask the village board, to address the emergency. This is not on the village board's agenda for discussion or action. It's presently under citizens to be heard, which which allows the village board to hear the information and hear a report from staff. And I guess with a little bit of leeway, we let trustees ask questions. But it can only be considered or action taken by the village board at a subsequent meeting when it's properly noticed. I'm hearing that we're going to be getting a formal opinion, which I wasn't aware of. That's good.
Yes.
I think that it's critical that we get that. There are legal issues and questions that should seriously be looked at, but at the moment, the DNR has said that we cannot put a fence there. I would be derelict in my duty if I advised the village board it could ignore a DNR directive without, especially I couldn't ask the village board to direct me to ignore it because it's not on your agenda.
It was just a specific question. If this village manager declared that it was an emergency, he would have the authority to do that.
Yes, I believe you
Thank
would.
you
If
very
there's a true emergency.
There's no ongoing emergency at the beach. This was an unfortunate situation. There may have been language problems that also came into play. Don't understand all the dynamics of what happened and why someone that can't swim would go dive in that lake. Don't understand it. But there have been 3 or 4 drownings in the metropolitan area this summer in Lake Michigan. Those unfortunate tragedies do occur. The DNR, we've gone back to the DNR. The DNR has specifically instructed us not to fence the beach. If it's not a fence, that would be directly defiant to the agency's instructions to the village. That is not a good place to be, okay? We need their goodwill. We work with them on a number of issues. The last thing we want to do is get crosswise and get into some kind of a contest with the agency. The letter will be here in a couple of weeks. There's no imminent emergency. We'll put it on the agenda when it comes back up. If the board at some point just determines that you want to unilaterally deny or act on this matter, regardless of the DNA position, that's something that you have a right to do.
And how do we get it on the next agenda? It's just
Well, we'll put it
advice.
on as soon as we get the letter.
No,
It'll
I'm saying
probably be
on
the
the
second
next-
meeting in September.
But what if, and I'm not saying I don't know what the other board members are, but if someone on the board wanted to put it on the next agenda, how would I go about doing that?
Talk to the
Item
village
11.
president.
He just said,
Contact the village president. I'll be gone for your next meeting. I'll be
But
back
isn't
for the
there-
second meeting in September.
Nathan said that if we made a motion and had a second, we could vote to put it on the next agenda. And I just don't remember where in here.
Well, you're gonna need to go to item 11 on this agenda, which is items for
Okay.
future consideration. Wait till that, and if you wanna talk about it at that time, you may.
Wait, thank you.
he meant to-
Larry, did you say that we're gonna get another attorney opinion on this? Because we
No, we're
have,
getting a letter from the DNR.
because we have already gotten an attorney's opinion on this from Ray Powell on July 12th, 2010. That
Correct.
says the beach and Lake Michigan are not under the DNR's authority and cites the same language and that in 1933 the land was ceded to
That is
the
correct.
county. So I am not in support of spending any more attorney money getting an opinion on something we already have an opinion on.
No, we don't need to redraft that opinion letter. I'm very aware of it. I've read it. I talked to the former village manager who processed the last application. He contacted the county parks district. They did not know what to do with it, did not assert any regulatory direction or authority over that beach, and essentially directed him to the DNR.
Okay,
He
why,
contacted the DNR, and the DNR took jurisdiction.
but we have an opinion saying that they don't have to. Anyway, I don't want to get into a discussion either, I just don't want to spend any more attorney money.
Let's get the letter
Because
and
we have an attorney
we can
opinion
challenge
that
them.
should still be valid, it's, you know, there's no reason the law has changed, the law hasn't changed as far as I know.
Their letter asserting that they do have authority postdates that decision. That letter was in 2011, asserting that they have authority over that beach up to the, what they call the ordinary high water mark.
Okay. I just need this. Do we have a copy of your statement that you read? I think maybe one, that I would appreciate.
I was going to say, if you want to just email it to